What is the worst example of rich people problems you have seen? I worked for a gal who had a speaker go out in her Ferrari and she refused to drive any further under those circumstances, so she pulled over to wait for one of her house staff to bring her the Porsche. Truth story. I saw a guy on Instagram who couldn't wait for a car he custom ordered, so he went and bought one from the dealer while he waited for the custom one. My old boss did this. He ordered a brand new BMW M5, and while he was waiting for it to be delivered, he bought a nearly new Maserati Quattroporte. When the BMW arrived, he had no more need for the Maserati, so he sold it and bought a Bentley Flying Spur with the money. This is the same guy who bought a Ferrari 575 Super America and drives it around like it's an everyday car. I knew someone who traded in his Porsche and bought a new one every year. His parents were wealthy, died when he was in his teens and left him a multi-million-dollar trust fund. What was sad was that he felt that he couldn't pick up women without flashing his cash and expensive sports car, but he would dump them all in a couple of weeks because they were only into me for my money. Loneliest guy I ever met. Edit. He is not Batman. His parents died in a car accident and his butler's name is Davin, not Alfred. When I was in high school, my family was pretty poor and I had a fairly rich friend. My single dad spent years saving up for us to go to Disneyland. We finally went when I was 16. Fast forward a year, my friend is going to Disneyland for Halloween break. Her dad told her to invite 2 friends. So she invited me and another girl. I was freaking stoked. But she kept saying, I don't know, it's probably going to be boring. My grandma takes me to Disneyland like every break, and when we got there all she wanted to do was sit on benches and text. All of the rides were boring and she'd already been on them dozens of times. It ended up being pretty boring for me because I didn't want to go on the rides without her. Super Riach docked in Italy at a high-end marina. Owners wanted the bottled Perrier water for a party they were having in a day or two. They wanted the marina to supply them with a pallet of said water. Marina said it was against policy for them to get a pallet of water to their boat. So they get a private jet from America to fly in a pallet of said water and get it dropped to the boat. Price was about $28,000 as far as I remember. But even that amount seems low for that. I had to help a girl pay her tuition bill. She was upset because she genuinely thought the process of putting in credit card information was difficult. Yes. She took her dad's credit card and paid $20,000 for the semester like it was buying a stick of gum. Had a former friend who went into despair because Hurricane Sandy flooded her living room of her childhood home. Told everyone she was homeless now and she knew what it felt like to lose everything the way her Jewish ancestors did in WWII. Thing is, she had an apartment she lived in on the island. Her parents owned several more vacation homes up and down the coast. They were a little inconvenienced maybe, but far from homeless. My rich aunt doesn't let us park in front of her house because it makes her mansion look bad. My parents are rich and they grew up super ducking poor. Their rich people problems are constantly worrying about money. They like to drive nice cars, have nice jewelry, and use it to up their status among their friends. In doing so, they spend money on useless things along the way simply for the pleasure of others and lost 2 of their 3 children claiming that they only loved them for money. It seems when your money is what makes you, you can't believe anyone would want anything to do with you otherwise and begin to treat them that way. Now they are getting old and have only 1 of their 3 children talking to them, and that one only does so after having spent about $500,000 of their dollars on nonsense with hopes that the bank continues to stay open for him. It used to upset me because I didn't want money. I was the youngest, so I just made do with my siblings' things and I never felt like I was given extra even though we had so much. Then to have your mother call you a whore when you ask if she'd buy you some running shoes is hard to forget. Especially if they just gave another son $200,000 for Drew, Gus and hookers. I worked for a non-profit that helped extremely low-income women start their own business. These women would give up food to scrape together enough money to join our program. One of our readees said she wished she could relate to our clients more, but she has never been poor. She owned 2 homes in one of the most expensive zip codes in the US. Also, another woman whom I really did respect but not always agree with, believed people chose to be in poverty. We would debate for days about that statement. I realized working there that people who run advocacy programs for poverty have no idea what it's really like. This is a problem because policy and lawmakers are looking at these institutions for advisement on drafting new social safety nets and welfare programs to help the working poor, and they just have no clue. It motivated me to go back and get a master's degree to fight this. I grew up super poor and can speak from experience, not theory. My neighbor is this really down-to-earth guy who managed to work his way from nothing to being quite wealthy. He has his own company and pulls in north of $200 per year. A few years ago he married this beautiful brunette that can safely be said to be on the upper scale of maintenance cost. She was given perhaps too much freedom when they redecorated their mansion and ordered custom-made stairs that cost about $100, which were made of glass steel. Once she had them installed though, she noticed that they didn't really match her choice in furniture, so she had a virtually identical set of stairs made that only differed from the last set by a few shades of white. How this guy puts up with her bullshit is beyond me. A cousin of mine is on his third Porsche 911 after he wrecked the first two. He told me that his parents said if he destroyed it again, they'd buy him some other car. He wrecked the first one while drunk, and he somehow didn't injure anyone. I don't even think he got charged with a DUI. Eat. 2 more. My family usually charters our own plane whenever we go on vacation. It costs something like $6,000 per hour or something. One year the company overcharged my dad for a minuscule amount. I think it was like $1,000. And he was considering disputing the charge or something, ignoring the fact that $1,000 is nothing to us, and he already paid $36,000 for a flight. Oh, and my parents hate tipping the pizza guy for some reason. They have no problem tipping away to 50% or even 100% at a fancy restaurant, but the pizza delivery man? Duck that. I know I'm late to this thread, but oh man, I work at a place where I interact with a lot of rich people. I have come into contact with lots of rich people problems. Here are a few I've witnessed. 14-year-old kid looking despondent, and I asked him what was wrong. He replied, "We're going to Paris, again. I hate it. It's so boring. Mom's talking. I took her to her little friend's birthday party but I didn't know what to bring. Do kids like Coach bags still? I have no idea. Ladies talking. What are you guys doing this summer?" Second Monday replies, "Oh, nothing. Last summer was crazy busy, so this summer we are taking it easy. We are spending 1 week in London and 1 week in Hawaii, but other than that nothing. We are relaxing this summer." Ladies talking. They can be expensive, but buying nicer cars like Porsches and Mercedes is worth it. We had a GMC once and we only drove it for like 4 years and we had to have something fixed. And it just felt old. There are many more, but those are a few. Edit. I get it. Paris is a crap hole and I can definitely understand that it is boring for a 14-year-old kid. The point was that complaining about taking multiple international vacations a year is definitely a rich person problem. My dad is a self-made millionaire. He accomplished it through hard work, and he raised me just as toughly as he was. He didn't want me to depend on money. I have some experience with people of my status. One girl I know convinced her parents to move so she could be closer to the horse stables she liked to ride at. She upped her dad's drive to work, and her mom's, and her little brother had to change schools in 8th grade, the worst time to pull a kid out. Get this though, she made her mom buy her favorite horse. She also would try and make Emmy buy her a horse, because I was rich and I didn't need my money like she did. I live in the part of my country where internet is really expensive. 16 megabits per second plans are considered plans for extremely rich people. One fine day, one of my friends threw a fit at his dad because he was getting 15 megabits per second instead of 16 for like an hour. Holy shit, dude, I live on a 2 Mbps connection which turns into a 512 kbps connection after a 30 GB data cap. I was pumping gas in a rather dicey neighborhood at a cheap gas station and this older woman pulls up in her Bentley. She pulls up on the pump ahead of me and cracks her window slightly and asks me for help. I ask her what she needs. She asked me to pump her gas cause she was too scared to do it herself. I asked her what type of gas she wanted and she said the cheapest. I asked her if she was sure, with such a high-end car, did she really want to put in budget gas? She said it didn't matter since she could easily afford any new car she wanted. So I insert my debit card and she hands me a $100 bill and says keep the change. I fill up a tank and my own 12-gallon Honda Civic tank and made about $30 in from the change. I finish up at the gas station and jump on the freeway to see my girlfriend at the time, and I am going the same way at this woman. I get off at the same exit as her. She is making a right to an affluent area and I am making a left off the exit to less nicer area. She rolls down the window and yells at me. I thought you were following me. I am so sorry, where are you heading? I told her to which neighborhood I am heading to. She gives an awkward smile and says I will tell the dispatcher that you are not following me and that I am not fearing for my life. Bitch called the cops on me thinking I was following her to rob her. I ended up getting to my destination chill with my girlfriend and didn't get pulled over. I work at a hotel and whenever I valet a Rolls Royce or Bentley I just think of this old lady. My mom's got a new boss at her not-for-profit domestic abuse prevention job. The woman didn't like the line of work and had even told some of her employees she was only there because she enjoyed not asking her husband for spending money, which is actually respectable. However, she didn't enjoy her work environment and had over half of the current staff replaced with people she felt better suited her work environment. Within 2 months of her arrival, 6 of the women earning less than $40,000 a year, most of which who were single and depended on the income, were let go. Basically so this woman could find her workday more tolerable and so she could spend her money on non-essential shit. A friend of mine who has considerably more money than me, though it doesn't take much, was always asking me to come on expensive trips with her, and I had to keep turning her down because I couldn't afford it. She'd say stuff like, oh go on, treat yourself, and I'd have to explain that I literally don't have the money. It's not that I don't want to spend it. It does not exist in my bank account. I eventually had to sit her down and explain that I'm poor. I told her about how I couldn't afford to buy much food, so during work days I'd live off the free fruit and coffee at the office. I showed her how all my shoes have holes and so I'd line them with plastic bags to stop the rain getting in. I explained that I cut my own hair and wash my clothes in water, no detergent. I pointed out that I'd long ago put all of my possessions that had any sort of value on eBay. I wasn't trying to get sympathy, I was only trying to explain why, for the 100th time, I was turning down her invitation for shopping trips, girls' nights out, weekends away, etc. She looked at me and nodded in understanding. I know what you mean. Things have been really tight for me recently. I'm so skint at the moment that I've had to cut my weekly manicure and spa days down to just 2 a month. My godmother's twin nephews complained about the colors of the Ferraris they got for their 14th birthday. They wanted the colors each other had but refused to trade each other because just because they were twins didn't mean they had to share everything. Their father got them replaced with the correct colors and within 6 months both of them had custom paint jobs anyway. By the time they were old enough to drive them they hated the cars because they were old and both got McLarens anyway. I have tons of stories about those little sheets. But I can't complain too much. Their father played in the NBA and knew what it was like to have nothing. He was a good guy even though he gave in to their shit way too often. Every time I saw him I would leave with thousands of dollars in clothes and shoes that he only wore once or not at all because his kids didn't want used clothes. I didn't give a duck. Yeah, most things were a bit too big for me, but duck it. I had 12 pairs of shoes that cost $500 each for free. Wearing 2 pairs of socks to make them fit better was a minor inconvenience. Edit. On a side note, not all basketball kids are like this. Mitchell Jordan is a complete big dig, but his kids couldn't have been more humble when I met them, and Allen Iverson's daughter was a complete joy to be around. I mean, as modest as anyone. She destroyed me in a game of basketball and said, hey, if every kid grew up with a full-size court in their house then 99% of them would be better than me. I don't have skill, I have opportunities. So classy. My buddy had to rent a cabin in for his ski trip because his mom just had theirs redecorated for a magazine spread which hadn't been photographed yet. This same guy couldn't remember which company card he should put his $4 strip club tab on. He really needs an assistant to help keep track of these things. He's interviewed some but hasn't hired one yet. Last week was rough. Edit. Tell those that say they'd want to be his assistant, unless you are a masochist, no you wouldn't. For every time you go to a strip club with a bunch of assholes he's entertaining, you will have picked up his kid from preschool about 20 times. Or double checked a few reams of paperwork. Or stayed on the phone trying to get a hold of some bureaucrat or another. Or any of a few dozen other boring tasks that you'd probably have to do 3 at a time. And on top of that you'd have to deal with King Asshole as your boss. No, not my friend. Inexplicably he's turned out to be a really good person. No, your real boss would be his dad, who tends to treat everyone that doesn't have at least his net worth worse than garbage, especially his employees. You'd get blamed for every little problem until you are losing your shit and quit, and they'll just pick up the next ambitious MBA they could find to take your place. I seriously wouldn't wish that job on my worst enemy. You may think you are tough-minded and could handle it, but you'd be the type that gets broken hardest. And it would be harder than it should be because my friend is such a nice guy, and you'd know that if it weren't for you, he'd bear the brunt of it in those times that are good are really, really good. I was invited to a graduation party, hosted by a very wealthy couple whose daughter had just graduated from Yale. Her father came out, in front of the guests, displaying his Rolex and Cartier watches, asking which one of the 2 expensive watches the group thought would be the more appropriate for the occasion. Everyone just looked at each other, silently not quite sure what to say. Not completely rich, but I can imagine it would be worse for someone richer. Cleaning up my parents' estate was a big hassle with safe deposit boxes, bank accounts, rare things to sell all over town. Also, had to deal with clearing out the house and selling it. Oh, bother. I went on an amazing trip, southern USA, with my girlfriend at the time during the summer, and she had an uncle who was very rich and she was used to all his wealth. I was not. I couldn't believe that we got to do all the amazing things we did. Money was just not an object or something you had to worry about. The 3rd day of the trip I was getting aboard his yacht. He owned the largest one in the club, and it was incredible. Glass stairs, stone walls and dark beautiful wood. We all sat down near the back at a table and the wife freaked out. She yelled, "Where are the mats?" Apparently there were supposed to be mats to be set down on the table before the giant glass bowl of chips and freshly made guacamole could be placed in front of us. She was really mad and almost embarrassed. I've never been so weirded out by someone's anger. I couldn't believe that it was such a problem. I said to myself, it's fine. Seriously, I could walk in there and grab them in 0.4 seconds. I'll never forget, and I learned that extremely rich people don't have the same kind of problems that regular people do. I was once friends with a Chinese girl whose family net worth appeared to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. She told me a story about a rich uncle who owned a super yacht and loved to travel around the world. Apparently his favorite thing to do was pull up into a port and bathe in the stares of everyone admiring his yacht, since it was always the biggest one. Well, one day he goes somewhere, say the Bahamas, and he pulls into the port and he isn't getting the usual attention since someone else happened to have a bigger yacht than him for once. This girl said it ruined his whole weekend. He was in a terrible mood and couldn't enjoy anything. I was speechless. Also, this is the same girl that constantly complained about how all her friends weren't that smart or nice and how she doesn't know what to do with all her free time and money. That girl taught me something. Apparently there are a lot of rich people that have so little problems, they just make them up. And yes, I've seen her Facebook pictures, met her friends, seen her cars, and talked to her long enough to confirm that she probably wasn't lying. So my great aunt and great uncle are multi-millionaires after my uncle sold his independent company. They are currently living in the Northeast while a few of their children live in the Midwest. Their daughter, in her mid-40s, is married to a man that has been struggling to keep a job for the last few years after being laid off due to the recession. In order to help their son-in-law get a job, they decided to open a franchise just to give him a job as a manager. Rich people problems. There's a neighborhood a few towns over where all the sports players and act live. and I just watch as they take their golf carts from the front door all the way to their detached garage, that's the size of a second house, and try to decide what model sports car to take out today. I live next to one of the greatest wealth per capita places in the world. A guy over on the island had the problem of his priceless art in his winter home being in danger from potential hurricanes, and he wasn't comfortable with the idea of it being moved out of the house when a hurricane was coming. His solution was to buy a decommissioned submarine and have it buried underneath his estate, then have a hallway built to it, and that's the place he puts his most valuable art pieces at this particular home if there was an impending hurricane. When the British invaded India, the king of a city did not get up from his throne because the orderly who used to put shoes on his feet had fled and his ego didn't let him get up and save his life. Have a friend. Nicest person ever. We have kids the same age. Husband pulling in millions a year. High profile job in sports. Can you watch the boys for a while on Sunday? Hubby wants to go to the Super Bowl and I can't get the babysitter over before 6. Yeah, I got that call on the Thursday before the Super Bowl. Long story short, she is miserable. And neurotic. Her kids have been to 5 different schools. And the oldest is only in 6th grade. She literally has nothing else to worry about, so she overthinks everything. Money doesn't buy happiness. It just takes away the mundane shit that 90% of us worry about. You still have problems, but now your problem isn't the cable bill or the car payment. They are much, much bigger. I'd much rather be happy than rich. But who knows, I could be wrong. And I might just be telling myself that because I am ducking broke. A former manager at work bought a Viper when they first came out, and he scared himself in it one day by oversteering a curve and essentially doing a 180 on a public street. His Land Rover Defender was in the paint shop, so he shows up to work in his Duesenberg Model J. Looked like a Nordsee staff car in the manager parking spot. I taught at a private school several years ago. During one recess, a first grade boy thought it a good idea to roll in the grass and dirt, making his white uniform polo filthy. I said, "Your mom is going to pitch a fit trying to get that shirt clean." He replied, "At 6 years old, she'll get the maid to do it. I no longer know how to speak to you, child." About the same time, I got my master's degree and I thought it a big enough deal that I paid for an expensive, to me, class ring, worth about $450. While chatting with the sales lady, whose job was to travel from college to college in Colorado and sell these, she told an interesting story. I asked her what her favorite college was in Colorado, just to make small talk. We were having this chat at the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, which is out in the middle of nowhere surrounded by flat ranch land and smelling like a feedlot, as a major one is situated right outside the town limits. She said the University of Southern Colorado in Pueblo was her favorite place to sell, because she knows the students there, a setting very similar to Greeley, work their asses off. It wasn't uncommon for her to get payment for a class ring from someone who was the first in their entire family to graduate or attend college, and they would pay her with wads of small bills that had been saved up piecemeal over years. In contrast, her least favorite campus was the University of Colorado in Boulder, as students would buy a ring from her, telling her to pick out the design because they didn't care and weren't going to wear it. Dad wanted them to have a ring, so here's the credit card. Just pick something. It is a myth. There was no invasion like the British just straight rolled up with millions of men on the shore and invaded. It was a process that took centuries of trade and political wrangling and occasional wars. There was no signing over of the country like the person below stated. They were independent states at that point on the road to converging, but there wasn't a wholesale signing over of the entire territory.